Okay, fantastic. Hello and welcome to everyone. My goodness me, huge amount of people here from all over the world. Just looking through the chat right now. My name is Sean Allison. I am the CEO of Cashflow Options. What do? We specialize in helping people make income, protect their hard-earned retirement money in what is going on around the globe right now. In 2020, it was our most successful year ever with what we do with our option trading. And really, the reason that I've got our next guest on, someone who I respect a lot and someone who you really want to listen to, because there's two rules that I live by in life. The first one is people lie, numbers don't. So we want to be able to look at the numbers here, really see what's going on. Look at people's, and number two is look at people's actions. Don't just listen to what they say, right? So you want to be able to look at the numbers and look at people's actions. That's really where it's at. And that's really where our next guest really shines. Someone who I respect because of the fact that he's got results. He's someone who's actually going to give us an insider's view of what goes on in politics, right? This is a gentleman who has a huge amount of experience actually seeing behind the curtain, if you like. Someone who really can give us an idea about what it's like, right? I've never been in politics, and probably many of you haven't either. And we don't really understand what goes on there. What are the decisions that are being made there? What's really going on outside of the view of the public? And we want to be able to see those things, or at least get a glimpse into what is going on here, because we've got a pandemic that's been with us now since, late February last year. We've got shutdowns, but we've got a market that's at all-time highs. We've got in certain areas, we've got a property boom. And a lot of this doesn't really make a lot of sense. They're looking now to, they're saying that cash is dirty, right? Are they looking now to get into a cashless society? I know that in Australia, where a large part of my following is from, they're looking to go cashless by 2024. So there is a push to go cashless. There's digital currencies that are going to be rolled out. Things are changing rapidly. And I'm sure you probably have all felt that over the last 12 months or so, that things have changed. And I think what we need to be able to do is get an idea about what's going on. Firstly, that would be a good place to start. And then from there, we can sort of, once we've built a strategic view about what's actually going on behind the curtain, then we can start to plan for what's likely to come up, what's likely to be there in the future, and how we can position ourselves to make money, but also protect ourselves as well. So very, very excited to have our very next guest here, someone who I've been looking forward to talking to for quite some time, Gerald Celente. And I'll give you a brief introduction into Gerald. Firstly, I want to say thank you very much for being here, Gerald, and thank you so much for giving us your time.
Oh, no, it's an honor for me. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a true pleasure. I just wish it was a different time and I could be in Australia now and be around so many people. But thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And a very wide group as far as the audience goes, from places all around the world, certainly Canada, Argentina, the US, obviously, many places throughout the US, the UK, large following. I mainly have, my subscribers are from Australia and New Zealand, but certainly people from all over the world here. So Gerald Celente is an American trend forecaster and is the publisher of Trends Journal. He's a business consultant, author, and makes predictions and forecasts about the global financial markets and other very important events that occur around the world. Now, the thing that I love about Gerald, like I just mentioned, is someone who actually understands what goes on behind the curtains in politics. So I'm very interested to get an idea about what he says here and his views on this, because has a lot of experience here. Had a mayor campaign in New York, and he actually served as the executive assistant to the secretary of the New York Senate. My goodness me. From 1973 to 1979, he traveled between major US cities, Chicago, Illinois, and Washington, D.C. as a government affairs specialist. So certainly someone here who is, has a very good understanding of what's going on behind the curtain. And that's really what we want to be able to see here. So I suppose for me, Gerald, the first thing I would love to ask you is, Since this pandemic first hit the globe back in late February, for me personally, this is what I've felt. I've felt some of my freedoms have been taken away. I feel like I'm in a place right now where there's so much uncertainty now that there wasn't before. Like things just changed on a dime like that. Do you think that they've actually handled this pandemic well, the governments around the world? And is that lack of freedom that I'm feeling, is that real or something that's in my head?
The way they've handled it, as I see it, and again, we were the first to call this in our magazine, the Trends Journal. You go back to the January 28th Trends Journal last, 2020. And the headline read, coronavirus, 106 dead in China. And our next line was 1.4 billion still alive. What are you telling me this for? What was it? 1.5 million people die every year in China from air pollution. And that's why they wear these things that everybody makes fun of. And now everyone wears them. And then again, we put out a magazine a weekly, so we just go by the numbers. Have they handled it properly? You mentioned Canada being one of your, the people, a lot of people from Canada. Just over the past weekend, they closed down Canada, Ontario. And we looked at the numbers, right? The numbers add up to nothing. When you see how many people died in Ontario and what they're doing. Same thing with Argentina, you mentioned. Argentina's president, Alberto Fernandez, on last Wednesday, announced a 3-week nighttime curfew. It begins from midnight to 6 a.m. Why not 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock a.m.? I mean, they're making this stuff up. The CDC said you had to be 6 feet away, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Oh, then they changed it. Let's make up a new number. Let's say 3 feet apart. There's no scientific data in what they're doing. The mask thing. You go to the World Trade Health Organization, New England Journal of Medicine, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and America's favorite guy, the expert, the health expert, Dr. Fauci. He was saying back in March, these things are useless. And so too did all of the agencies I just mentioned. They didn't change that until last June. Canada. You have 23,000 deaths, 38 million people over a course of a year. 38 million people, 23,000 deaths. What do you have in Australia? You have about 25 million people, 909 deaths. How many people die of air pollution every year? 8.7 million was the latest number. Hey, you like all those chemicals in the pesticides that they spray on your food, the chemicals in the water that you drink, in the air, in the earth, in the food, the preservatives? They're killing us 1,000 different ways, and they're bringing this thing out. I was talking about Ontario. 7.5 million people. 7.5 thousand people over the year have died out of 14 million. You know what the average age is? 88% over 70. In all of Canada, according to Lancet, 80% of the people die from nursing homes. You know what happens after you get out of a nursing home, then you go to daycare and you start your life all over again? I mean, come on, who's dying from this? People with type 2 diabetics, obesity. Why does America have all these dead people? Couldn't be because 42% of the nation is obese, 70% are overweight. And boy, those junk food sales keep going up. Not a peep about building your immune system or getting in better health. You got to get vaccinated. Talk about freedom. Now we have the vaccination passports. No, this has been a power trip for politicians. As you mentioned, I began my career at 26 years old. I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate, and it was the worst job I've had in my life. And I've been working since a kid. I grew up in the Bronx, and I've been working my whole life. It was the worst job I ever had, to watch grown men grovel to suck their way up to the top. The political system is nothing more than the people you hated in high school and college that would do anything to become class president or head of the student council. And we're still in high school, and that's still the attitude that they have. As I mentioned, Canada, the guy, Doug Ford, the premier. These words, premier, honorable, dignitaries, officials, health experts, to me, that's profanity. Using those words, to me, when you tell somebody to go F you, that's not profanity. Enough of your crap. I don't want to take it anymore. But to keep categorizing these people, a premier. Oh, yes, sir. What premier? Another daddy's boy born on third base and thought he had a home run. The guy who's playing, the head of Canada, Trudeau, another daddy's boy. I got another daddy's boy over here, Andy Cuomo. Would be nobody if daddy wasn't Mario. You got the guy, what was his name? George W. Bush? Yeah, another daddy's boy. Oh, that guy Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al Qaeda. And he only killed 1 million people. We won't talk about that. No, the whole thing is a freak show. You lost your freedom. You're censored if you say anything that they don't want you to say. Big tech is in charge. Our experts say. And then when you say F you, that's profanity. It is not profanity. Profanity, I am sick and tired of hearing these words, the royal family. Oh, yeah, they never put on one leg at a time. They just poof. They're royal all the time. So no, our freedoms have been stolen from us, and it's only going to get worse because, hey, they're still counting the numbers from the coronavirus. It's a year ago. Oh, but there's no flu this year. Nobody died of pneumonia, hardly. So every year they're going to keep doing this and keep promoting vaccine passports and vaccines.
Interesting. Now, vaccines, it's interesting that you bring that up. When I look at some of the frequently asked questions regarding vaccines, this is very interesting. I like your view on vaccines in general. When we look up, some pretty basic questions you would probably think if you're going to have a vaccine, one of them would be, if I'm fully vaccinated, does it prevent me from getting COVID-19? Well, the answer here is no, it doesn't. Then the other question here is, look, if I do get fully vaccinated, does that then prevent me from spreading it to other people? Again, the answer is no, it doesn't. So it sort of seems like, there's 36% now of the US population that's been vaccinated, at least one dose. What is going on here, Gerald? I mean, the fact is that they're saying that it doesn't prevent coronavirus. It doesn't prevent you from spreading it. What is the reason why we are getting vaccinated?
People are fearful. It's the denial of death. And again, you look at the recovery rates, depending on whose numbers you look at. It's either 99.7%, 99.8%, or a recovery rate of 98%. And again, the people that are dying have 2.4 pre-existing comorbidities, and the elderly that are. I have a sister in a nursing home. They called me last April. She's kind of out of it, and they said that she had COVID. She never knew she had it. So again, people are fearful. There's a denial of death. You don't have the advertisements. They have them in New Zealand and then in the US, the only two countries where the drug companies are allowed to advertise and peddle their drugs. And they give you 30 seconds of, oh, take this and you're going to feel great. Happy days are here again. And they give you 30 seconds of how this thing's going to screw you up 15 different ways. And as you point out, no, this isn't. Think of the name, how they push this through. Operation Warped Speed. Yes, so to me, it's warped. And now you're hearing from Netanyahu in Israel that they're talking about a vaccination every year.
Mm.
So again, this is, people are fearful. And again, we wrote about this in detail. The media was the first to sell this. Their ratings were going into the toilet in 2000 and early 2020. Nobody was paying any attention to it. And we quoted Jeff Zucker from CNN telling his staff to stay on the COVID. It's really, a lot of people are tuning into watching it. And now that's all the news. So fear sells. I mentioned George W. Bush. One of our covers of the Trends Journal was dumb enough to believe Bush's wars, dumb enough to believe the COVID war. And 80% of the people marched off to war. They believed it. So the people, my father, may his soul rest in peace, when I'd shoot my mouth off as a little kid, he'd say to me in Italian, Papagallo, stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself. Now you're not allowed to think for yourself. I would be called a conspiracy theorist if I didn't believe what they were shoving down my throat.
Yeah. Interesting. It's, I don't really, yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be a point there where they're going to continue to push the vaccine. And, I don't really know what the full agenda is there, but certainly it's something that is going to be with us for a while. Now, what do you think about lockdowns? Do they actually work? Before we get into sort of, what's going on with the economy and finance and those type of things, what do you think about lockdowns? Have they been effective?
The facts are showing it. Again, they're making this crap up. Name the country. I mean, all right, you could open from, you got to close at 6 p.m. and then you could open up at 5 a.m. No, I say close at 10 p.m. and open up at 7 a.m. Again, they're making this stuff up. When I was a kid, they had us hiding under a desk in case an atom bomb went off. Like that was going to make a difference. So then you look at the countries, look at the rate, the COVID cases to death rate in Sweden. And they'll say, oh, they're a lot worse than the other Nordic countries. What? Finland, Norway? How about Belgium? That's not too far away. And Sweden didn't close down at all. And Belgium's a lot higher. And so is France, and so is Italy, and so is Spain. And now we got this thing in Michigan where it's all the news, cases are going up. They locked down one of the hardest. Florida is wide open. Texas is open. The rates are going down. They're making this stuff up. Oh, by the way, the recovery rate, they're freaking us out as a kid, had to hang us under a desk. I was scared stiff. The sirens go off. Now little kids are walking around with masks on. And you know what the recovery rate of a child, again, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, who get the virus, it's only 99.997%. And they're showing that they don't transfer the virus when they're asymptomatic. And now they came out and saying, that when you're scrubbing, doing all this scrubbing and wiping, it's a waste of time. See, we're just writing about it in the Trends Journal is going out tomorrow. The chances of picking up the virus on an object are 1 in 10,000. But yet they had everybody everywhere is scrubbing. No, this is pure. And why are they doing it? I believe the profits already from one of the companies is over $17 billion.
Wow.
And people say, oh, the governments are giving this shot for free. No, grow up. It's our tax money that's paying for this.
Very interesting. Now, I recently watched a documentary called The Four Horsemen. Very interesting documentary. And what it did is actually talked about the how similar America is right now to the fall of the Roman Empire.
Oh, yep.
And I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about this. I mean, in Australia, we've always thought of America as like our big brother, always there to protect us, look after us. We've always been a staunch ally of the US, and we've always had a great relationship with the United States. But right now, there does seem like America is going through some sort of downfall almost. It seems like things over there are almost out of control from what we're seeing. I don't know what it's like over there, but what's your view on America as the superpower of the world? Is that something that are they going to lose that status? Are they going to lose, becoming the world's reserve currency? What's happening in America right now that is going to impact individuals like us?
One of our top trends for 2021 was China 21st century. The 20th century was the American century. The 21st century is going to be the Chinese century. Mm-hmm. The business of America has been war. The business of China is business. There was this guy, his name was Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was only a 5-star general and supreme commander of the Allied forces during World War II. He hated war. Of course, two-term president in the United States. Anybody could Google it up. January 17th, 1961, 3 days before he's leaving office, he gives the nation his farewell address. And what does General Dwight D. Eisenhower warn? He warns the American people that the military-industrial complex is robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. Here we are. They've wasted that money and time. And then what happened is, go back to 1990s and Bill Clinton becoming president, first with NAFTA and taking our jobs out and bringing them down to Mexico, and then with bringing China into the World Trade Organization. Signed, by the way, officially 2 weeks after 9/11 in 2001. So what do you look at China's gross domestic product from the 1970s to 2001, and it shoots up. It shoots straight up. So the Europeans, the Americans, they took the manufacturing, both from heavy industry and high tech. China couldn't make stuff. They brought it all over there. You can only become a 49% partner. You're a minor partner here, but you have to make your stuff here. And now China has all the technology. They have all the industrial knowledge that they need. And again, what they're doing with their Belt and Road Initiative, and again, it's on stall right now, but look at all the ports that they bought around the world and the deals. The biggest pork company, Smith's Pork in America, is owned by the Chinese. So and again, it's one after another. So the 21st, unfortunately, that book is correct as we see it. It will be the Chinese century, and you will obey. There is no freedom there. You have one power in charge, and it's the government. And that's what it's moving more and more toward. So as far as the dollar, we see the United States in the same place as the UK after World War I, when the pounds started slipping out and the dollar started moving in. And we believe that the dollar, once something happens, a wild card event, and they pull the dollar, for example, off the petrodollar, that's when you're going to see the death of the dollar. Because look what they're doing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The debt now in the United States is $28 trillion. And I love the lines they come out with. They're going to do another $1.9 trillion infrastructure program. It's not 2 trillion, it's 1.9 trillion. That's like saying you're buying something and it's $99.99. But they use this because, again, the people don't really pay attention. They only hear the words. And then by the way, you look at that infrastructure program, only 220 billion of that 2 trillion is really going into the infrastructure. And then now let's go back to China. Look at China's infrastructure. That's what they did, by the way, when the COVID war was launched. They put the money into small businesses in their infrastructure, while the United States is dumping it into the equity markets and keeping those up artificially high and pumping it into the economy. And anybody that's been in New York, or many of the places here where they have subways, It's a night in Calcutta, the third world infrastructure of America. Ride your car in New York City and blow out your front end, because that's the kind of bumps and steel plates that you hit all over the place.
Wow. Now, during this time that we've seen the pandemic, I think there's been a massive transfer of wealth that is going on right now. The people that have money appear to be getting richer. The people that don't have a lot of money, appear to be becoming poorer. And, this pandemic has thrown around 150 million people into poverty. Now, interesting stat here, talking about this wealth gap that's going on. The top 1% of US households hold 15 times more wealth than the bottom 50% combined, which is staggering. In fact, Bill Gates, Bezos, and Warren Buffett hold more than half, have more wealth than half of the population of the United States combined. So more than 160 million Americans, 3 people. So is this something that you've noticed as well, a massive transfer of wealth and the gap between the people that have money and don't have money widening dramatically?
We've been writing about this for a number of years. And again, what used to have laws in the United States were called antitrust laws, antitrust acts, Robinson-Patman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, Clayton Antitrust Act, then of course the Glass-Steagall Act about the banks. So when I was a kid, there were local banks all over. Whatever city you lived, they had local banks. And then they started deregulating the industry. Now you have, a handful of banks own the whole deal. When I was a kid, there were thousands of radio and TV stations. Now you have 6 companies that control over 90%. That's Bill Clinton's 1996 Federal Communications Act, and also the 1999 end of the Glass-Steagall Act. As for the rich becoming richer, Oxfam estimates that 26 people have more wealth in the world than half the world's population.
Wow.
Tracking trends means current events form future trends. So what we do each day is we study the news. I mean, this is, this goes to my writers. I mean, you could see like every article is underlined, and, this is just like a day's worth of work. Every article, and then it goes to the writers. I underline the articles, they hit the salient points of them, and then I give the trend forecasts. Staying on current events, forming future trends. And you brought this up, and as everyone, we never talked about any of this before we got on the air. No. Here's the headline from Forbes. Right off. A new billionaire every 17 hours.
Wow.
Through the pandemic, though the pandemic hit the world economy hard in many places, this did not apply to the richest of the rich. And they go on to say 5 of Chinese new billionaires came to their riches through vaping, on and on. Most of the newly minted billionaires, 205 to be exact, come from China. As I said, the 21st century is the Chinese century. Today's Wall Street Journal, front page. CEO pay climbs in year of vast upheaval. That's it. It's the consolidation of businesses. Look at the merger and acquisition activity that's going on. It's still escalating. So the bigs are getting bigger. And again, we're talking about the lockdowns. I'm the governor. I'm going to make up anything I want. You could go to Walmart. You could go to Costco. You could go to all the big chains. There's no social distancing. There's no capacity limitations. They're essential businesses. You, the small people out there, you're non-essential. Close up. I'll tell you when you can open up again. You look at the numbers. I was reading out of Canada before. You know, they're estimating, what's the number here? Like some 74,000 small businesses in Ontario going out of business. You're looking at over 100,000 restaurants in America going out of business. Wow. So the bigs are going to get bigger. The concentration of wealth is going to get greater. And you're going to have blowback on this. You know, it's going to be kind of like an off with their heads kind of thing. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And they're losing it big time. Look at the homicide rates skyrocketing all over the big cities. That's why people are leaving big cities, by the way, and going to suburbs and exurbs for two reasons. One, they're afraid of getting the virus. And number two, they're afraid of the violence going on. You go to Midtown New York, it's dead town. I mean, it's a whole different place.
Wow. Yeah, things have changed in a big way. Now, if we sort of transfer here a little bit, sort of change tact, if we look here at the stock market, right, you sort of did mention that before, and I love the way that you actually said this, the Biden bounce, which is pretty much what's going on now, right? Markets at all-time highs. We've seen a dramatic move higher just recently. The NASDAQ having a very nice move, not so much last night, but recently. Things have been moving up dramatically, but we have a massively overvalued market. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you look at the Warren Buffett stat that he uses when we divide the total market cap of stocks by the GDP of the entire country, and anything more than 115% is overvalued. Right now, we're sitting at 232%. So the stock market is 232% of the entire economic output of the United States. That's a massively overvalued market. I see this ending very badly. What's your views on markets being at all-time highs, Gerald?
You know, I got it wrong in the past. I got a lot of them right. I call I'm on record, the first guy to call the crash of 87, the dot-com bust. A magazine in October 1999, we said it would bust by the second quarter of 2000, which it did in March. And then I took out the domain name Panic of 08 in 2007. I thought things would collapse in 2012. Matter of fact, I bought 4 historic buildings right here in Kingston, New York. And one of the mortgage rates back then was 2.85%. It was the bottom. I didn't know if they didn't teach me anything about quantitative easing and zero and negative interest rate policy in Economics 101 or graduate school. They're money junkies. They'll do anything to artificially prop this up. Let's go back to before this happened. Let's go back to September 2019. And all of a sudden, we're hearing about the Federal Reserve dumping in how many hundreds of billions into the repo market. Like, what's a repo market? Never heard of that before. Oh, you mean a place where they could borrow money cheap so they could gamble? And what did they pump in between 2000 September to January 2020? $7 trillion. Oh, what did the Federal Reserve dump into the markets and banks around the world from 2007 to 2010? Well, according to the Levy Institute at Bard College, only $29 trillion. This isn't real money. It's not like okay, here's 29 trillion, count it, this is all made up stuff. So when will the markets crash? I don't know. I mean, it's a wild card that will do it. It will be something out of their control. And of course, the wild card that's not that wild that we're all looking at now is inflation.
Yes.
I mean, you look at the numbers. Oh, by the way, the housing prices where I am over here in Kingston, they went up the highest, according to Bloomberg, of anywhere else in the country. They're up 18.1%. Do you know housing prices are not put into the consumer price index?
Yes.
And so are not a lot of other things. Again, they rigged that during the Clinton administration, and so they could keep interest rates low. And number two, so that Social Security doesn't have to pay you more money because it's tied to inflation rates. So the real inflation rates, I go to shadow stats. I mean, you look at his shadow, the unemployment rates, and they're double, more than triple what we have over here. So everybody's concerned. To build a house, by the way, in the United States, an average house costs $24,000 more just in lumber. Just in lumber. Wow. And now you're looking at all the commodity prices going up, or so many of them. So whether it's for the electric vehicles, for housing, for whatever it might be. So inflation, to me, is going to be the wild card, because they cannot afford to raise interest rates. When interest rates go up, the stock market is going to go down. End of story. Now, there could be the wild cards in between, that whether they're man-made or by Mother Nature, I gotta be equal. I don't want to be called sexist. I said man-made and Mother Nature in his gender proper world. I'm being sarcastic, of course. The say amen, you got to say a women too now. But anyway, I'm just you don't know what could happen. There could be all of a sudden these SPACs that they invented that nobody heard of before. That could crash the market. Or the GameStop, the young people playing the markets, could something like that crash the market? Could some natural event happen? Earthquakes, whatever it might be. The only thing that's artificially holding up the markets, the economies, are the equity markets. When the equity markets crash, then Main Street will know how bad it is. But right now, Main Street's not on the radar. We're going to look at celebrities. That's what we put out there. So Main Street doesn't count.
Yeah, it's. I think you're right. Inflation is the big issue, and then obviously the only way for them to really negate that is to raise rates, and that's going to be very bad for the stock market. Now, digital currencies. What's your view on digital currencies? Certainly, that has gained headway dramatically since this pandemic, and I think you would probably agree with this quote: "Don't let a good crisis go to waste." So are they looking to now speed up this process of digital currencies? And how is that going to impact things? I know China's already ahead of the curve there, right?
Oh, yeah, you're way right. That's correct. I was going to say the same thing. China's way ahead. And everybody's going to go digital as we see it for two reasons. Reason number one is when the thing crashes, they're going to invent a new currency as we see it. And again, the people won't care. Just as they march off to wars and believe everything there's fed, they'll believe this too. And you don't want to use that dirty cash. Now we have clean digital trash. All you do is put your thing up. But more than that, now they know every penny that you spent, where you spent it, how you spent it, who you spent it. There's no leaving that tip in cash. There's none of that. The politicians, politics, they suck everything out of you that they can so they don't have to work. And they could keep the charade going. They're definitely going to go globally. It's the 21st century currency. It's your app and you're paid and that's it. By the way, I don't carry a cell phone. I did work for the cellular telecommunications industry going back to 1994 when they had these big things in the trunks of cars with aerials. And I've been studying radio frequency radiation since then. So anyway, I don't have Wi-Fi around me either. But they're going to go all digital. Now, you go back to our Trends Journal last June, 2020. We said Bitcoin would break out when it went solidly over 10,000. And now as we're speaking, it's over 60,000.
Yep.
And now we were saying, people ask how it could go to 100,000. It could go higher. However, we've been saying continually that the central banks are not going to want competition and they are going to do everything to stop digital currencies. They're going, and today just came out of CNBC. CEO of top Bitcoin exchange warns a crackdown on cryptocurrencies may be coming.
Yes.
So we've been saying this and saying it over and over again. And here it is, just came out. And of course, we heard Christine Lagarde, the former head of the International Monetary Fund and now head of the European Central Bank, warning, that, there's this. They were never doing this before, by the way. Money laundering never existed. It's just now it's just going to happen because of cryptocurrencies, and we have to stop it. So that's what they're going to keep using, these kind of things to stop the crypto. But how high? And by the way, the money going into cryptocurrencies, That's money not going into precious metals, gold and silver.
Yes, true. So these digital currencies are going to be a threat to Bitcoin then, you think?
Oh, all the digital currencies, the digital currencies are going to be a threat to the governments. And they're going to do, at some point, we believe they're going to shut them down. And they're going to make up any excuse why to do it. That guy Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al Qaeda. Oh, we don't need the truth. We'll just make it up. Money laundering. We'll make up anything we want. There was this guy called Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Oh, yeah, he was the president of the United States. And right after he got elected, turn in your gold. I want your gold. No, we're going into a depression. We want your money. Okay, yes, sir. All right, they'll do anything.
Yes. So it's not like now you wouldn't be thinking a confiscation of gold, right? That's not really where.
No, I don't see that happen.
But now they're focusing their attention on Bitcoin because it's something that they can't track, something that is in direct competition to what they're trying to achieve with their own digital currency. That makes a lot of sense. And the digital currency, I think,
not only direct competition with their achieving, it's direct competition with the equity markets as well.
Right. Yes.
And they want the equity. Their focus is the equity markets and the markets that they could control. This is out of their control. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make
that's fine. Yeah. So that was a key point that you hit on there. It is about control, isn't it? So once you've got a digital currency, there's nowhere to hide. So it is very much about control. I mean, certainly that was something I knew, but you just saying it then, it really hit home then that is a really a big driving force for them to get that complete control.
All right. Now let's stay on the term control. The way we track trends is we call it a globalnomic system, making connections between different fields. Control. How did we start the conversation? We started talking about COVID and the politicians. Control. I'm in control. I'm your governor, I'm your senator, I'm your premier, I'm your president, I'm your prime minister. Control. It's control.
Yes.
Freedom, gone. Control.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, gold and silver, precious metals. What are your views on those? I mean, certainly something I'm invested in, and I love gold and silver miners as well. I believe gold miners and silver miners tend to even outperform the precious metals as well. So I love delving into those as well. But what's your views on gold and silver now?
You know, my first buy of gold was $187.50 an ounce. I was trading futures when I worked for that group back in the 70s. And nobody was doing it back then. I turned a $5,000 bet into almost $750,000, which was big money back then.
Wow.
And but I lost most of it. And that's when I quit my job and began the Trends Research Institute. But so I've been following the markets since then.
Yes.
And I'm very bullish on gold and silver.
Okay.
And on silver, I see because again, the cryptocurrencies, I see it's a different world. And the precious metals that's a digital world. This is a real world. This is a solid world. Silver is used in high tech. And I see the prices of silver going at a higher rate of percentage gain than gold. Right. And I see silver going over $50 an ounce and gold over $2,100 an ounce this year. And of course, when the markets crash, it'll skyrocket. But going back to silver, unlike gold, there's no stockpiles of silver. After you use your computer, your phone, whatever, you throw it out. It's in the garbage. It's in the dump, the silver. You're not picking it out and bringing it back. So and then as we're going more into alternative energies, silver is the greatest conductor of electricity. So there's going to be more and more of that used. So I don't see any end to this. And gold, again, the central banks are going to keep buying reserve currencies, using it as the currency to back up their digital nothing money. And I still see gold being the foundation of what it is for centuries and not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for yourself personally, are you buying physical gold? Are you ETFs, gold
Now
miners?
I bought ETFs at one time for my retirement account,
That was a
and I had
tax
to
sort of,
buy it. And then
yeah.
they didn't allow you to buy bullion back then. But
Right.
I only buy physical.
Physical. Okay. Interesting. So for people right now that are confused about what's going on, I think we've answered some of their questions and given them a good idea about what is actually going on here. What is your forecast for, let's just say this year, right? Obviously, it's very difficult to sort of predict exactly. No one knows exactly, but obviously your views on the precious metals is they're going to rise, and particularly if the markets were to move down and the Fed was, forced to raise rates, that would certainly see the precious metals move higher. But your view on the best way to sort of protect yourself right now, what are some of the things that you could do? Would it be simply to invest in precious metals? Would it be to, what would be some of the ways that you would suggest people protect themselves?
I'm not allowed to give financial advice. If I do,
Right.
they'll come after me because I'm not
Okay.
a registered, finance. So I can't say that. Speaking only for myself, I believe in precious metals, and I just bought some recently. And I also believe in real estate.
Right.
I believe there's going to be commercial real estate's going to dive. It's a new
Yes.
world. I mean, you're looking at an office occupancy rate in New York City at 14%. And people are, I mean, they hate commuting. Who wants to drive, an hour and a half each way, 3 hours a day or whatever? And so they're working at home. They're going to go back to work, but not as much. So now what's going to happen to it was overbuilt before. By the way, Manhattan before in 2019, whether it was Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue, Park Avenue, West Village, for rent signs in 2019. And now it's way overbuilt. And not only there, all around. So you're not going to get the people coming back in on the commercial sector, and the businesses that relied on those floods of people coming in every day, they're going to go out. So I see commercial real estate going down, but I see this boom that happened where people, this is unprecedented. People are moving up without seeing anything. They're moving to places where they want to get to for either tax purposes or get away to other areas without even seeing the places. They're buying them sight unseen. So millennials now are buying, and they weren't before. Number two, when you went to the real estate boom back in the early 2000s, it was speculative. And you had the junk, the subprime mortgages. You had that whole thing going on. That's not going on this time. You have to have, you got to be making money to buy it.
Yes.
And people are buying them. They're not more than speculating in them. Again, this is unprecedented. So I don't see those going down when this thing crashes, when the markets crash. Well, the price, they'll go down. But I see commercial real estate in a big problem. And the line, the BS that they're pumping out there, we'll turn those office buildings into residential. Oh, great. You got a lot of people living in where they're going to work. So the economy is definitely going to bounce back. They're dumping all this money into it, but it's artificial bounce. Again, you look at the numbers, and whether it's the World Bank, one after another, they're coming out. It's not going to be till 2024 till the jobs that have been lost come back. But how about creating new jobs? What's going to happen to them? Oh, then, well, forget that. So again, you're looking at the numbers. We talked about it. The rich have gotten richer. It's going to go down a lot of places. But the immigration problems, you haven't seen anything yet. It's just going to get a lot worse. Again, South America, Latin America, gone. Tourism, dead. Flooding up. Oh, Africa? Oh, wonderful times in Ethiopia. How about Sudan? Oh, yeah, it's just great over. One after another, you're seeing unrest. More and more people flooding out. Again, those are the kind of things we look at. But going back to the real estate, it's not going to come back in the commercial sector. We don't see it in many of the big cities.
Yes. So precious metals, if I'm hearing you correctly, precious metals makes a whole lot of sense to have at least some of your portfolio parked there. And then residential real estate would be a smart move as well. Your view just quickly on Bitcoin. A lot of people, that's the latest thing. Everyone's talking about that. It would be very likely to see a significant move higher here, potentially to 100,000 before a dramatic move lower, even if it was to move higher after that. And this is where a lot of people get themselves in trouble with the volatility in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So that would be a very real possibility, right? To have a dramatic move down in Bitcoin.
Yeah. When Bitcoin broke over 45,000, we gave it the breakout point on the low end we gave it 25,500, 26,000. That's even a high number. We said if it goes below that, it could fall, it could go way down under that. Again, it's a totally speculative game. It could go up to 100,000, yes. But the breakout points, we still see if it go, again, we're talking now, 26,000 sounds low compared to where it is now, is 60,000. Yes. But going back to, if all of a sudden you start hearing one government after another saying, we have to stop this. We have to stop this now. Money laundering, drug dealers, blah, 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 blah. It'll crash the market, yes, as we see.
Yes. I know that
and
the
when
Indian
that
government...
happens, by the way,
yeah.
We see a big spike in precious metals.
Yes. Yes.
We also, by the way, we were off a bit on it, but we're still saying we're going to see a weaker dollar.
Okay.
And, the yuan's gone down, the euro's gone down. And again, for good purposes, the euro, but the dollar should not be where it is, considering all the cheap money they're dumping in. So, of course, the lower the dollar gets, the higher inflation goes. And then we have to go back, looking at the dollar now, look what's going on in the emerging markets. The emerging markets, their debt's dollar debt. So it's based on the dollar. So the higher the dollar goes, they need more of their currencies to pay their debt. They're in trouble now. So yes, there's a lot of, back and forth flows here. But the bottom line is everything is overvalued in the equity markets, and so too with the currencies. These currencies shouldn't be worth anything. How are you going to pay? Let's go back. How are you going to pay off the debt? Listen to the Fed Chair Powell. It's okay. Interest rates are low. Oh, yeah, but what happens when they go up? Well, we're not going to talk about that. Using his words, we have, quote, tools. Yeah, you got tools. What am I, 6 years old? You're inventing this stuff. They will not know what to do. Look at Turkey. There's your example. Look at interest rates. Look at the lira. Look how they try to raise them. And look what happened to the central banker. Puppy's gone. And now with the lira, it's at an all-time low. And, so when they lower interest rates. So we're in that volatile sector. And that's why, to me, gold and silver are the precious metals at a time of volatility and markets growing that make absolutely no sense that they boomed during the last year. Other than, of course, the tech sector, when they spent almost $1 trillion more in the States on online. And now here we are zooming. So that made sense. But all these other ones, they should be, down to nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something right now that we know is going to end badly, but I think you've hit on some very key points there. If they're forced to raise rates, probably because of inflation worries, or at least inflation expectations, they'll be forced to raise rates. That could be a big trigger for the market. Anytime you've got a massively overvalued market like this, any shot over the bow that people aren't expecting, like you said, could trigger this market lower. And right now things are moving higher because we do have a government that's very open to, stimulus and just doing whatever they have to do. But we all understand it's going to end badly. And I think to be able to make money in either direction, moving up or down, for me as a short-term momentum trader has been fantastic for me. I like volatility. So it's actually been a very profitable last couple of 14 months for me anyway, and certainly my members. But I suppose the best sort of thing we can end this on, and I really appreciate you being here, Gerald. It's been fantastic. I look forward to talking to you again. I'm just looking at this now, just popped up on my newsfeed. The fact that the Indian government is now making their first move to regulate Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, making it mandatory for all companies in the country to disclose their dealings in virtual currencies in their balance sheet. Is this something that will start to catch on with other governments?
Yes. Again, as I said, that could bring down the thing once you keep hearing more and more of what they're going to do. And you mentioned India, and this is so important. Go back to 2019. There were protests going on in India. There were protests going on in France and in Lebanon, in Bolivia, in Chile, in Peru. They're going on of South Africa, all over the world. How many quarters of declining GDP growth were there in India leading up to the COVID war in 2020? I think there were like 7 consecutive declining quarters.
Yes.
Germany in 2019 going into 2020 was fractions of a way of going into recession before this happened. Japan. Right. And so that's what people are missing, that it was bad, it was going down before this happened, and the central banks were artificially propping it up. They're going, every government is going to print as much money as they can get away with to artificially prop this up. They will do anything, particularly to keep the equity markets higher. Yes. Because when the equity markets crash, that'll be the end. Then everyone will realize how bad it is.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think some very valuable comments there. Now, what I would say right now for everyone here, let's just give a huge thank you to Gerald for actually being here. I appreciate your time, and I really look forward to talking to you again, if you wouldn't mind coming back again sometime in the future. Oh,
it'd be an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. What a fantastic interview. A virtual round of applause for Gerald. Thank you so much for being here. Look forward to talking to you again, and some really crucial points that Gerald brings up there. He's giving you some keys as to when the market is likely to move down, where to actually start parking some of your money, right? Precious metals, not so much commercial real estate. We're not happy with that, but residential, and really the ability to be able to think for yourself, look at the numbers, look at people's actions. And I think we've done that very, very well in this 1-hour interview. And I appreciate you being here, Gerald. And thank you so much for your time today.
And thank you. Bye-bye.